Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Sunday, July 25th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 39 days. The game against Michigan in 125 days. Big Ten Media Days wrapped up Friday in Indianapolis, and in addition to all the players and coaches we got to talk to, we also got a chance to spend some time with Big Ten Director of Football Officiating, Bill Carollo. There are some noticeable changes coming to college football rules this fall. Carollo explained the thinking and the details behind some of those. We'll get to those in a couple minutes, but first, I asked him about something we've heard a lot of complaining about from defensive assistants in recent years: offensive linemen getting too far downfield on RPOs. With the growth of RPOs in football, you don't have to talk to defensive coaches very long to hear them complaining about linemen being too far downfield. Is that something you guys are hearing about a lot at the league office? And if so, is that going to be more of a point of emphasis? You're enforcing that a little more tightly?
In fact, I have a rules committee meeting tomorrow, and that's on the agenda. And it's interesting you bring that up because certain leagues are getting ready, gearing up, and certain leagues do a lot more RPO than, let's say, the Big Ten or the Mid-American Conference, some of the other conferences in the Midwest. And it's a real problem. Those linemen, the rule says I can block up downfield up to 3 yards, I got to stop. And that's okay. Legal, right? Now these guys, RPOs, they're running downfield, searching to get that linebacker at the 3 yard mark, but they're throwing passes underneath it. It's like an offensive pass interference. So it technically is offensive pass interference. So we have to get a clarification and have it consistent across the country, because some teams are intentionally running it, and they're covering up the tight end, and you think he's a tight end, but you don't know he's actually covered, so he's ineligible, and he's going downfield, and he's setting a block, a pick, and then running that wide receiver right underneath him. And so we're pretty inconsistent in that area, so we got to clean that up. It's come up with coaches and stuff. Here's how we're going to call it. Here's the rule. Here's how we're going to interpret it. And I want to set out to everybody and it's in writing so everyone does it the right way. They might make a mistake, but you got to go back to the rule book and say, here's how we want it.
You mentioned that was something you were going to bring to this meeting this week. What are some other things you guys are thinking about looking at or changing or modifying how you're enforcing this year?
Well, I mean, we're locked in for the rules, and there's a few tweaks that we have to modify, take a look at. There's a couple, you make a rule change or a philosophy or a mechanic change, but did you think about this? If on a punt play when it's blocked and he's batting the ball and and you easily say, well, the game's over. So there's a few minor things on rules or administration because it's like the one exception to the rule, and you better know the exception to the rule because this could hurt one team. So we make some small changes. I'd say the biggest change you see next year has to do with low blocks and where you can block low and you can't block low. And we came close to voting on it. We held off on the vote. Probably for good reasons. We want to collect more data on, we want empirical data on injuries. Tell me because most of the low blocks that occur in lower extremities injuries are linemen, because they're allowed to cut block, and that's why they wear the knee braces and everything. So I said, let's get the data. Let's find out where the most dangerous. It's just like we know kickoffs are. We studied kickoffs and change of possessions and punts, but now we are narrowing in. And NFL's looking at it. High school has looked at it. They're eliminating most low blocks, and from that standpoint, we'll probably be more restrictive in low blocks as we go forward. Probably the biggest change,
Starting this fall, teams will have to start going for two in the second overtime period. That's one of the big changes coming this fall. Once the game reaches a third overtime, the teams will just alternate 2-point attempts. So no more scoring touchdowns in the third overtime. Just once you get past that second overtime, it's just 2-point attempt, 2-point attempt, 2-point attempt, 2-point attempt until someone scores when the opponent doesn't, and then the game's over. Another change to the rules this season is the taunting rules. Video board, lighting system operators are now included as, quote, personnel who may not create any distraction that obstructs play. They're also going to be putting an additional emphasis on penalizing taunting. Here's how Carollo explained the line between what is and isn't considered taunting.
Well, here's what I tell my officials. I mean, the coach or player or someone can say something. If they say it at you versus at the call, like that's a bad call, versus you're bad, when it gets personal like that, that's where the line is. And if it's anything on taunting, if you try to show up your opponent, we allow for spontaneous celebration. I scored a touchdown, I'm going to do a backflip or something. I mean, something spontaneous that you really high-five, that's all okay. But if you do it in the face of your opponent, or if I'm going in for a touchdown and I get to you and I go, bye-bye, I just beat you on that touchdown, that's toward your opponent, and you're trying to show up the opponent, and that's a problem because it leads to fights, skirmishes, and it just guys will push and shove. But we've had melees break out because of taunting. So we're pretty tough, and we've been tough for a while on taunting. It's pretty good, But on the faking injuries, it's not really in the taunting area, but it's unsportsmanlike. So we got that. But the mascots and the game, and if it's spontaneous, it's a celebration, we're okay on that. We've seen players score a touchdown and run past the other bench area. That to me, that's enough for taunting. Like, we just beat you, Or you go up out to their logo, and they stamp on their logo, He's not doing it to a player, but they're doing it to their taunting. We're gonna bang it. We're gonna hit a 15-yard penalty. So there's some judgment in it, and just so you know, we put a dozen things that you can't do. There's another dozen that we haven't even come up with. I mean, it was never the throat slash. There was never, all this, or stand over a guy and like I'm Hercules or something like. You can't put everything in the book because the kids they're out ahead of my officials. We don't know what they're doing and what kind of sign language or what they're sending a message. So we figure it out if it causes problems. I mean, there's a big deal in some teams if their symbol is longhorns or they're doing this. You can't do it to this team, but but you can do it to your crowd. I mean, so that's gray area, right? I mean, and then you think, well, that's okay. That's our mascot, or that's our emblem, our symbol. But the reality is, and I tell the guys, just ask yourself, is that fair to do that? Would you say that in front of your mother? Would you do that? And if it probably is, no, I wouldn't say that or do that in front of my mother. It's probably taunting them, especially if it's at his opponent.
Carollo was also asked about replay, whether it had been a positive or a negative thing for the game. Here's his answer, as well as an explanation of a big change in how they're going to be handling video review of targeting this season.
Well, I think we've made a lot of improvement. I don't think we were great, and I wouldn't pat ourselves on our back and break our hand, but congratulating us from day one. The Big Ten started replay in college, experimental, like in 2004, 2005, and we've come a long way. That means getting the right people there, number one, and then getting the right training there. It's different than being on the field 20 years, 25 years to make a pass interference or a holding call, understanding the game and the scheme of the game. It's a different skill set. So getting that skill set, identifying what is this right skill set, not just experience, but they have to be able to walk through an analytical process, before they pull the trigger and either stop the game or change the call. So I'm a big proponent of replay, and when I was in the NFL and they brought it in, I didn't like it. They're going to second guess every call, and all the talking heads will be discussing the play, and they get slow motion and everything. We see it one time, but it's probably the best rule change in the last 50 years. It gets the one or two mistakes. We make in the college level, we make 5 or 6 mistakes a game. NFL is maybe a little bit better, but in the college game, 5 or 6 mistakes. If 1 or 2 of them are critical to the game and the outcome, we want to take a second look at this. The whole world can see it, video. Everyone's got TVs, cameras. We don't have it, so that we incorporated that, and that has really helped the game. So we've made improvements, but we got a lot of controversy on targeting. We're throwing out people on the margin. It's safety, so we're going to err on that side. But we're throwing a lot of people out, and we couldn't prove it. So now we don't use the category stands. Either it is or it isn't. And if it sits in the middle, gray area, then he stays in the game. No foul. So I think that's good. The coaches like it. The players like it. We want to make sure, though, we take out those activities, lowering the helmet, attacking, targeting, using it as a battering ram to punish somebody. We want you to make the tackle, but keep your head up. Wrap up with your arms like a tackle, try to get your head to the side, you should be okay. And replay can help us in that area. Because those plays happen really fast.
Carollo was also asked whether there had been talk of going to some kind of a tiered system for targeting penalties, similar to the NBA's flagrant 1 and flagrant 2 fouls. Here was his answer on that.
We talk about it, and here's the problem. Most officials, just like if it's a face mask, we used to have 5-yard face mask or a 15-yard face mask. And most officials will go to the lowest common denominator and go 5 yards versus 15. And when you get to, face mask could be dangerous, but not as bad as targeting. And every year we talk about F1, F2, flagrant 1, flagrant 2, just make it a 15-yard penalty. If it's really egregious, well, your egregious is a lot different than the coach who had his player injured, who's out of the game. He said, that was egregious. and targeting is targeting, so it's got to be attacking. We're reluctant right now, at least the rules committee and the competition committee, to go that route for basketball or other sports that might have different levels. Yellow card, red card, same idea. It's not real bad, but I'm giving you a yellow.
And if you get it again, you're out, no
yes,
matter what.
Right. And that would be, we talked about that. If you got 2 yellows or 2 F1s, you're out.
Yeah.
So it's talked about. It's probably a softer way, and more people would be happy. I kind of like, here's the rule, don't do it. And here's the penalty. Really heavy penalty. You're kicked out for the rest of the game, and the second half, you're kicked out the next half. That's pretty heavy for when kids are only playing 12, 13, 14 games.
Hopefully you guys found that interesting. That was an interview that I found myself thinking I would probably refer back to throughout the fall when there were questions about some new rule. So hopefully that was something that is not too pedantic, not too tightly focused for you guys. Hopefully you thought that was an interesting show. Figured worth a shot. And we don't normally do shows on Sunday, so if not, well, we'll be back tomorrow with another show. But it was a very busy week at Big Ten Media Days. We wanted to had plenty of content. Wanted to give you another day of Morning Scoop. We will be back tomorrow with plenty more, but if you don't want to wait and want to get more content before then, check out BuckeyeScoop.com. Mark Giffler, Tony Gerderman, and I were at Big Ten Media Days Thursday and Friday. Had a ton of content, lots of interviews. You can find them all on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. And even more detailed insight and analysis on our Ask the Insiders board. Just become a member at BuckeyeScoop.com to get all of that. And also make sure to check out all of our great podcasts. Tony Gerdenman and I did several episodes of the Buckeye Weekly podcast in addition to the Morning Scoop this week. So you'll get lots more detail on some of the interviews, all the things we heard and learned this week at Big Ten Media Days. Sometimes these events can be kind of dry. This week, there was a lot of interesting stuff this week, and it does seem like this might be a pretty good season for Ohio State, so it might be a good time to become a member of BuckeyeScoop.com to get all the insight and analysis that our team of insiders can bring to you. So that'll do it for today. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.